joining us now, Managing Director of the Qatar U.S. Business Council, my good friend Mohammed Barakat. Mohammed, great to have you with us.
Hey, John, how are you? Thanks for
I'm really
having me
excited.
again.
I'm doing fabulous, and it's always good to have you on to get an update. The cooperation now between Qatar and the United States, and I know you're the managing director of the Business Council, where we've got a lot of investment going on in the U.S. I just wanted to have you start by giving us an update on some of the goings on.
Yes, of course. John, as you know, Qatar commitment to invest in the United States continue to grow. The initial number is $45 billion by 2020 or 2022. Now there's more news that they might be even increased to that number in many occasions that have been discussed, which is a great news to the U.S. and the U.S. Economy. Part of the investment, $10 billion, goes to infrastructure projects, and Qatar is evaluating several infrastructure projects. That's something that will add very, very important value to the U.S. market. On the other news, I would say you might heard a few weeks ago, the Conrad Hotel in downtown Washington, D.C. Opened up, which is an investment by Qatar DR, which is an arm of Qatar Investment Authority, and their partner Hines. It's a major development in the DC city center, which is valuated the full development between $650 and $800 million. It's going to create a lot of jobs. It created a lot of jobs during the construction period. It's a 320 plus rooms with also, it's a mixed use, so there's also commercial use in that property. It's a beautiful property, adds a lot of to Washington, D.C., creates more jobs, attracts more people as well with the brands that they're going to open up in the property, which brings more income to the city. As well, a couple months ago, there's a major commitment between Qatar Investment Authority and Crown investors to invest what equals to $5.4 billion in New York in different shopping and development projects in the city. That's in addition to the West Manhattan project that Qatar committed $8.4 billion in investment there. So the investments are growing on that side. On the energy side, I would say as well, we talked about a while ago, $10 billion in the Golden Pass LNG terminal in Texas between Qatar Petroleum and their partner ExxonMobil. The construction actually is going to start soon, and things are moving forward on that. It's going to create thousands of jobs in that area, and it's going to be as well generating more jobs indirect way after the completion and starting to export. It's an gas export terminal. The Qatar Petroleum, as well as in Qatar itself, announced the expansion of the LNG capacity. So most of these tenders and these projects have been announced in the last couple of weeks. A lot of the partners that are bidding on these projects and going to be involved in these projects are American major energy companies. That contributes to more, of course, revenue generated, more income, and as well more jobs, both in an indirect way when it comes to these projects. So it's going to grow. I mean, in addition to all the numbers that we talked about before, almost $24 billion, there is more now has been committed, and we're going to see more coming soon as well in across the United States.
You know, the level of investment that Qatar is doing in the United States, which is a direct investment in the U.S. that creates jobs and economic prosperity for Americans. Beyond just making the investments into U.S., and I know we're just so that everybody knows we're with Mohammed Baratek, and Mohammed is the managing director of the U.S. Qatar Business Council that cooperates between the two countries. Is there an overriding objective that the Business Council has, that the Qatari Business Council has in the U.S.? I mean, other than making what you think are sound investments where you're going to get a return on the dollar, is there any other agenda here that goes
Yeah.
on other than just
Well,
straight making investments?
John, so from the Business Council perspective, we're actually more focused on increasing trade, so increasing more exports from the United States towards Qatar, helping more American companies export their products internationally, finding partners, finding markets in the Qatari market. That's our main objective, helping American companies that actually doing business in Qatar or with Qatar to expand that, so more revenues, more jobs created through the enhancement of the American businesses with Qatar. On the investment side, we're more of like a facilitator, as you know, traveling around, hearing and learning more about projects. Investment itself is with Qatar Investment Authority, that they make the decisions on the investments and what actually, fits within their criteria. Now, on the trade side as well, I mean, that's very important part of the relationship. The investments create jobs, comes directly to the United States market, adds value. It's a cash value comes in and changes, the areas where these investments are committed. But as well, the trade is valued at $6.6 billion last year. There's a trade surplus of $2.4 billion on the U.S. side. So the U.S. has exported in 2018 more than it has exported many years before. So more American products are entering the Qatari market, which creating more manufacturing facilities here. So you're advancing these manufacturing facilities, more people looking to expand their operations by selling more into the Qatari market. So that commitment on trade is creating a lot and many, many jobs. And a lot of these manufacturing jobs, when it comes to products, from food products to small electronic items, and it's a long list, all these manufacturing facility in the United States sell to Qatar, and the contracts keep growing. And they're expanding and keeping these jobs alive in the United States. That's not, of course, that's without talking about, the military acquisitions, which is valued more than $26 billion, which as well generates many, many jobs. And as adding to that as well, the airline purchase from the United States, from Boeing and many other airplane parts that they're buying from the United States. Qatar Airways has outstanding orders worth $92 billion of American-made airplanes. So that by itself is almost 560,000 jobs, just the aviation one in the United States.
You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. We are with Mohammed Baratek. He is the managing director of the U.S. Qatar Business Council. Pretty interesting when you talk about trade and how far we've come between the two countries, Mohammed. And I just want to reiterate, total trade last year, U.S. Qatar, $6.6 billion. That's total trade. $2.4 billion surplus U.S. side. And as our listeners know, I'm not in favor of trade deficits. And I think that's been one of the problems in our economy for a long time. So there are very few countries whose representatives or other people affiliated with them that we get on our radio show that can actually say, hey, the U.S. has a trade surplus with us. Normally we get the people talking about China on where we had, or the EU or whatever, where the trade deficit is, or Mexico, where it's in the hundreds of billions of dollars. When you look at the 6.6 billion trade between the two countries, and obviously the number of U.S. exports going in, what would the top three of those be, just off the top of your head?
So you have a lot of on the food products as well. You have IT products, which goes into electronics as well, coming in. Vehicles and associated auto parts that relates to that. these are very big when it comes to if you want to mention the top 3 or 4.
Well, it's been amazing growth because you go back a decade and that 6.6 billion was under $1 billion, right? It was just about, I looked at it, was like 700 or 800 million. So the trade has been significant between Qatar and the United States. What role is the U.S. playing in the 2022 World Cup? I know that Qatar is making a huge investment there in stadiums, rail, transportation, hotels, accommodations. What role is the U.S. playing in that, Mohammed?
So, John, a lot of the projects with the related the Soccer World Cup in Qatar, many of the American companies actually have major role in the build-up, construction side of it, as well on the project management. So a lot of the American companies were involved in the project management and the building up the stadiums, as well in a lot of the facilities that relate to the World Cup, the rail and metro rail system as well. So we have many American companies engaged on a very high level in Qatar when it comes to these projects. That also adds to it, for example, the expansion of the airport, the previous airport, now it's a new airport. There were American companies involved in these contracts worth billions of dollars. Again, very great contribution to that. And they continue. A lot of these projects are still live, and American companies are very actively involved in these projects in Qatar. So the U.S. Has a major role in these projects. When it comes to, if you want to look at the World Cup, you see the balance is more American companies involved than many other companies.
It's an amazing relationship that you've been able to build. Especially, Mohammed, we have to deal with the political realities of it. I mean, you have to navigate your way through the politics, because Qatar obviously in the Gulf competing now politically and otherwise with the Saudis and their lobbyists and things of that nature. And you guys have been able to navigate your way through some of the rhetoric with just pure results and the level of investments that are going on. When you go around the country and you talk to different people and look at different possibilities for investment from Qatar into the United States, going forward, visionary, are there a couple geography areas you're looking at, specific industries of growth you're looking at? What are some of the areas you're going to be focused on for U.S. investment, Mohammed, going forward?
So Qatar Investment Authority, with their investment arm, has mentioned that they're looking to invest more in the tech industry. So a lot of the new investments will be evaluating investing in many companies that working on breakthrough technologies that is growing and it's needed. So you're going to see more of that, more investments going towards the IT tech industry. And then we'll see more as well going towards the infrastructure. And infrastructure covers potentially from utilities to put on roads and bridges, airports, critical facilities. In a way, there's no decision has been made yet on any of these projects, but they're evaluating this. Now, when it comes to geography, it's totally open. I mean, Qatar Investment Authority evaluates all markets. They go look at potential projects as well. And the great thing about the way Qatar invests in the United States, that they always work with partners. So they come in, they're looking for partners. They come as a shareholder, partners that usually well known. They know how to manage assets or technologies. So they can guarantee that these projects will be delivered on time or will be managed in the best way possible. And as well, the market knowledge that comes from the U.S. partner is very important for the Qatari investment. And as you recall, Qatar investments are a very long-term investment. So and that is very, very critical point, John, because some investment comes in for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. When you look at the general scheme of people investing in the United States, a lot of people always look for exit strategies. That's not how Qatar look at their investments in the United States. They look at it as a very long-term investment, 20, 30 years and beyond, which brings stability to these projects. You know that they're coming in and they're staying for the long haul, and that actually really adds great value to the economy, because you know that this money is going to stay in your market, it's going to stay in the economy for a very long time.
Let me ask you one other question, Mohammed. You mentioned investment potentially by the Qatar Investment Authority in U.S. utilities and infrastructure. Typically, when you think about those in the U.S., you think about public-private partnerships. We're going to that. But basically, the public utilities are owned by the state or by the government, and bridges and roads obviously a function of government. So how do you get a return on that? I mean, how do you invest in infrastructure and then get a return when it's basically managed and owned by separate government entities?
So if they go for the part of the infrastructure as utilities, and again, it's all being evaluated, with these infrastructure projects, there's no expected high returns, because it's known in many of these projects the returns are much lower than, I would say, investment in real estate or in the retail itself. So knowing that the expected return is not going to be high, and still going for it, that's where it fits into the picture. Some of these projects, even if it's a PPP, government-owned or state-owned, a lot of them, their operators as well are private sector, which would be potentially the partners. The small returns on a very long term still provide a stability to the portfolio of the investments when it comes to a major investor that are investing in everything, investing in real estate, which higher return, retail higher return. But then you need that long-term, stable investment on the long term. So you look at infrastructure projects, utility projects, which as well contribute more to their actual commitment to the relationship. So some of these investments, you look at it, it's a really great picture of how much they're committed to a partnership with the United States rather than just, a business relationship. So it's a long-term partnership. And sometimes with these long-term partnerships, you take, the risk on going lower on your returns to actually get into that market.
Great answer. Lower returns, better partnership, lower risk, and enhances the cooperation between the two entities in a public-private partnership relationship. Great segment, Mohammed. Baratek, as always, I enjoy having you on. Love to get your insight and giving us an update for that. Very interesting, sir. Thank you so much for being with us.
Of course, John. I just want to say one more thing, John, if you allow me.
Yes.
I was just wanted to say as well to show the commitment. Qatar just announced that they hired actually the first commercial attaché in the United States. So the Ministry of Commerce and Industry now has a division, a commercial attaché in the embassy here to work on advancing that relationship, and that just shows how much there is more commitment to increase the trade with the United States.
Who is that? Do you have a name?
Yes, his name is Fahd al-Dosari, and he just assumed his position. So we work with them closely, and we're looking forward to see more engagement.
So Qatar commercial attaché in the Qatari embassy here in Washington, D.C.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Thank you, Mohammed. Great update. I'm going to try to get him on my show next week if I can do that. That should be interesting. Of course, it's a little tougher. You got to go through all the diplomatic channels. Mohammed, thanks. I'll see you next week. John Fredericks Radio Network.